What's up everyone, Stoner here from AudioEcstasyProductions.com. Today I want to talk about what I think is one of the most discouraging things for up-and-coming mixers, producers, and engineers, and that is that they work in either an untreated room or a room with very, very minimal treatment, and they find that their mixes don't translate outside of that room. They kind of just fall apart anywhere else. I want to talk about just a few simple tips that can help you if you're in this situation. Let's check it out. Okay, so the first tip is really simple. Get room treatment. There's just no way around it. I know that you probably hear this a lot on the internet, how you should invest in treatment before you get a new toy like a preamp or a compressor, but sometimes, just sometimes, the internet is right. You need room treatment. There's just no way around it. Now I understand that it can be extremely pricey and some people have construction limitations, like maybe you live in an apartment. There's actually a really great service called Phone by Mail that sells really high-rated room treatment that is really comparable to the guys that cost easily 10 times as much. Room treatment really is the best investment that you can make in your studio. So tip number 2 is just test your mixes on as many sources as possible. You should be doing this anyway. This is something that can benefit any engineer working in any kind of studio. Doing this will help you realize common denominators in the room that you're working with, and maybe it'll help you see places where you're overcompensating, maybe with EQ and compression, when really the deficiencies are in your room and how you hear sound in your room. Okay, tip number 3 is room positioning. Where is your gear located relative to the space that you're working in? I know, as I mentioned, a lot of us are in square rooms or rectangular rooms, which present a ton of low-end issues, among other things, so this is something to keep in mind. Also, it's important to note that rectangular rooms especially have a bass null right at 50% of the way back, right in the middle of the room, so it's recommended that you avoid setting your stuff up in the middle of the room anyway. Okay, there's something called the 38% rule, which essentially means that you want to have your gear positioned about a little over a third of the way back in the room for optimal sound quality. Alright, tip number 4 is monitor positioning. You basically want the monitors to be set up in an equidistant triangle relative to your listening position. So, say there's 2.5 feet between each monitor, then your listening position should be 2.5 feet back from the monitors. But it's also recommended that you have your monitors at least a foot from any wall and at least 2 feet from any corner to avoid standing waves and nodes. Alright, and as you can see, I'm working in a really small control room here, so I'm not really able to set up my speakers relative to the walls like I would like, but that's okay. Alright, last but not least, tip number 5 is what I call the poor man's baffle. Now, this is an extremely DIY approach, but it actually can produce really good results, because essentially the point of room treatment in the beginning is to confuse sound so that it's not bouncing around the room in ways that are unflattering to the mixing process. Now, what absorbs sound is mass. Don't listen when you see people use egg crates and things like that in movies, and if anyone has, I'm sure, recommended it on the internet, don't do this. This can actually make it worse. There's no mass to egg crates, and it can actually increase reflections within the room. Just don't do it. So this trick is simple. You essentially just go buy inexpensive moving blankets from discount hardware stores, fold them up, and throw them over mic stands. We're actually going to do a separate video just on creating one of these. It's super simple. We're actually going to throw in some images right here, but it is actually really effective. It's great for live tracking, and if you set it up in the room behind your listening position, it can actually help dampen the room and give you more of a treated room kind of sound. It's also really important to note that professional sound treatment has many elements. There's bass traps, diffusers, absorbers, etc. Anything that's DIY is really going to be a one-trick pony, and while it's better than nothing, I can't reiterate enough how important professional room treatment is to making great music in your own studio. Okay, so these are just a few tips, ways that I would recommend getting the most out of your space if you're working in an untreated room. I know it can be discouraging You can feel like you're chasing your tail because you finally get a mix sounding great in your control room and you take it out into the world, whether it's the car or anywhere else, and it just falls apart. I know how discouraging this can be. Don't lose hope. There's always workarounds. When there are problems, there are just as often solutions. So please, we would love to hear from you in the comment section below if there's any tips that you guys do working in an untreated room to make your space sound better and help you get more out of it. We would love to hear your tips. We can always, make another video. Like I said, we're gonna make one on how to make a poor man's baffle. That's coming up. So guys, Stoner with audio, ecstasyproductions.com. Please subscribe. Thank you for watching.